Imagine this. You finally work up the courage to ask someone out. They smile, pause for a second, and say, "I'm sorry, no." You smile back, you tell them it's okay. You walk away. And for a few minutes, it actually is. But then something strange happens. On the way home, your mind starts talking. Maybe I wasn't attractive enough. I knew this would happen. Why does nobody ever choose me? Now imagine a different day. You've been preparing for weeks. You finish the interview feeling surprisingly confident. A few days later, an email arrives. "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." You read it once, then again, then one more time, as if the words might change. They don't. But somehow, your thoughts do. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Or maybe it's something even smaller. You send someone a message. They usually reply within minutes. Today, nothing. An hour passes, then another. You tell yourself not to overthink it, but your brain has already started. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Maybe they don't want me around anymore. Have you noticed something? Every one of these situations feels completely different. Different people, different places, different outcomes. But they all end the same way, with your mind quietly telling you a story. And after hearing that story enough times, you stop questioning it. You simply believe it. Here's what's interesting. The person who rejected you never said you weren't attractive. The interviewer never said you'd never succeed. Your friend never said they didn't care about you. They only gave you an answer. Everything after that came from somewhere else. And yet, that's the part that hurts the most. Not the rejection itself, the meaning your mind attached to it. Because if we're honest, most of us don't spend our lives remembering rejections. We spend our lives remembering what we believed those rejections meant. One no becomes, "I'm not enough." One failure becomes, "I'm a failure." One relationship ends, and somehow your brain starts writing the ending to every relationship you'll ever have. It's almost unfair. One moment somehow turns into your entire identity. But why? Why does your mind do this? Why is it so quick to turn one event into a conclusion about your whole life? To understand that, you have to understand something your brain has been trying to do since long before you were born. For almost all of human history, surviving alone wasn't really an option. You needed people. Not because it felt nice, because it kept you alive. Your group meant protection, food, shelter, a future. Losing that group wasn't just emotionally painful, it was dangerous. And although the world has completely changed, your brain never really got the memo. Today, getting rejected from a job won't leave you starving. A first date saying no won't leave you wandering through the wilderness. Your friends being busy this weekend doesn't mean you've been abandoned. But your brain doesn't react to modern situations. It reacts using ancient instincts. That's why rejection doesn't feel like information. It feels personal. It feels like something inside you is suddenly at risk. Your chest feels heavy. Your stomach sinks. You replay the moment over and over, looking for the exact second everything went wrong. Not because you're weak, not because you're dramatic, because your brain is trying to answer one question. What does this mean? And that's where everything changes. Because your brain hates unanswered questions. It would rather have a painful answer than no answer at all. So the moment something doesn't make sense, it fills in the blank. It doesn't know why they rejected you, so it guesses. It doesn't know why they never replied, so it invents a reason. It doesn't know why someone chose another person over you, so it quietly whispers, "Because you weren't enough." And the scariest part? It doesn't sound like a guess. It sounds like the truth. That's why two people can experience the exact same rejection and walk away with completely different lives. One person hears, "No," and keeps moving. The other hears, "No," and carries that moment for years. Not because the rejection was different, but because the story was. And here's the realization that changed the way I see every rejection I've ever experienced. There weren't one, but two things that happened. The first one lasted only a few seconds. The second one, I've been carrying for years. And until you can tell the difference between those two, every rejection will feel much bigger than it really is. If the story is what keeps the pain alive, then maybe the first question isn't, how do I stop getting rejected? Maybe it's, why do I believe the story so quickly? Think about it. Imagine you wake up tomorrow, check your phone, and the person you texted last night still hasn't replied. Almost instantly, your mind says, they're ignoring you. But here's something strange. How did your brain know that? Did they tell you they were ignoring you? No. Did you ask them? No. Did you somehow gain access to their thoughts overnight? Of course not. So where did that answer come from? It came from the same place every painful story comes from. Your brain's desperate need to make sense of uncertainty. Because uncertainty is uncomfortable. I don't know why they haven't replied. That sentence feels unfinished. It leaves a loose end, and your brain hates loose ends, so it grabs the first explanation it can find. Even if that explanation hurts you, because to your brain, a painful certainty feels safer than an unanswered question. And once you understand that, something fascinating begins to happen. You stop treating your first thought like it's the truth. You start treating it like it's simply the first draft. Think about every rejection you've carried. The interview, the relationship, the friendship that slowly faded away, the opportunity you didn't get. Now ask yourself one simple question. What actually happened? Not, what did it mean? Just, what happened? Maybe someone else had more experience. Maybe they weren't emotionally available. Maybe they were dealing with something you'll never know. Maybe they simply made a different choice. Notice something. Every one of those explanations is possible, but so is this one. I don't know. For some reason, those three words terrify us. We act as if not knowing is dangerous, so instead, we invent certainty. I know why. They didn't choose me because I'm not enough. But the truth is, that's not certainty. That's imagination wearing the mask of certainty. And the strange thing is, we almost never question it. If your friend walked into the room and said, "My boss didn't smile this morning, I'm pretty sure I'm getting fired," you probably laugh. You tell them they're jumping to conclusions, that there could be 100 different explanations. Yet when your own mind does the exact same thing, you rarely argue back. You simply nod. Because your own thoughts sound convincing. Not because they're true, because they're yours. Maybe that's the real lesson. Your brain is incredibly intelligent, but it's not an unbiased narrator. It's trying to protect you. Sometimes it protects you from danger. Other times, it tries to protect you from uncertainty. And in doing so, it accidentally creates suffering that never needed to exist. The moment you realize that, something quietly changes. The next time rejection happens, and it will, you'll notice something you've never noticed before. There will be a tiny gap. A gap so small, you've probably missed it your entire life. First, the event happens. Then, your brain reaches for a story. For years. Those two things happened so quickly, they felt like one. Now, you'll see the space between them. And inside that space, you get to choose. Not whether rejection hurts. It probably will. Not whether you'll feel disappointed. You probably will. But whether that disappointment becomes your identity. Because those are two completely different things. One is an emotion. The other is a decision your brain quietly makes on your behalf. And for the first time, you don't have to agree with it. Maybe someone says no. That doesn't mean you're unworthy. Maybe someone doesn't reply. That doesn't mean you're forgettable. Maybe you don't get the job. That doesn't mean you'll never succeed. Those are stories, not verdicts. Imagine your future for a second. A year from now, another opportunity comes along, you apply, you wait, and once again, the answer is no. The old version of you would have walked away carrying something much heavier than rejection. They would have carried a sentence. I'm not good enough. That sentence would have followed them into the next interview, the next relationship, the next conversation, until eventually they stopped seeing it as a sentence and started seeing it as who they were. But not anymore. Now, you pause. You notice your mind beginning to write. You almost smile, because you've seen this author before. You let the feeling exist. You let the disappointment pass through you. But when your brain reaches for the ending, you gently close the book. Not because you know the happy ending, but because you're finally comfortable admitting you don't know the ending yet. Maybe this rejection protects you from something you can't see. Maybe it redirects you towards something better. Or maybe it's simply one ordinary moment that doesn't deserve to become the title of your entire life, because in the end, the most dangerous word was never. No, it was therefore. They rejected me. Therefore, I'm not enough. She left me. Therefore, I'll always be alone. I failed today. Therefore, I'm a failure. For years, your brain connected those two words without asking your permission. Today, you finally notice the space between them. And maybe that's what freedom really is. Not living a life without rejection, but living a life where rejection is no longer allowed to write your story, because the story of your life was never supposed to be written by your biggest fear. It was always supposed to be written by you.